The dragons Daenerys rides in Game of Thrones are anatomically wyverns, yet the show calls them dragons anyway, and that choice has quietly erased a distinction fantasy and heraldry have honored for centuries. Wyverns aren't corrupted dragons, degenerate cousins, or budget stand ins. They're a separate species with their own evolutionary niche, their own magic, and their own symbolic weight. We're going to untangle the anatomy, intelligence, magical systems, and heraldic tradition that kept these creatures distinct until modern adaptations decided convenience mattered more than canon. Start with the body count. Dragons have 6 limbs, 4 legs plus 2 wings. That configuration gives them dual mastery, stalking overland like apex predators and dominating the skies with equal ease. Wyverns are built like raptors, 2 hind legs and 2 wings that double as 4 limbs, claws attached mid-wing for grip and strike. It's not a downgrade, it's specialization. That bipedal stance makes wyverns faster in the air, more agile in a dive, optimized for hit and run aerial predation, rather than the dragon's slower ground and pound dominance. Think hawk versus tiger, both lethal, both adapted to different hunting strategies, neither a corrupted version of the other. The intelligence divide is just as sharp. Dragons in canonical lore are sapient. They speak, cast spells, philosophize, manipulate politics, and hoard treasure as both wealth and tactical leverage. They're architects of their environment, reshaping magic and geography around their lairs. Wyverns operate on a lower cognitive tier. They don't speak, they roar and signal through body language. They possess sharp spatial awareness and predator instinct, but not the abstract reasoning that lets a dragon negotiate with a king or lay a century-long trap. In Dungeons and Dragons, wyverns are mid-level threats, dangerous enough to test your tactics but survivable with the right preparation. Dragons are existential. You don't just fight a dragon and move on. You build an entire campaign around the attempt. Magically, the gap widens further. Dragons command elemental breath weapons: fire, ice, lightning, poison, acid, each one tied to a distinct bloodline in most fantasy systems. They cast spells independently, warp the magical fabric of their territory, and leave scars on the world that persist long after they're gone. Wyverns traditionally possess a single fire breath variant, and in many settings they don't breathe anything at all. Instead, they rely on speed, venom, and that wickedly barbed tail, a piercing, poisonous weapon that makes them lethal in close quarters, even without elemental projection. Some authors lean into this gap and build alternative systems. In John Cronshaw's The Ravenglass Throne, wyverns don't breathe fire. Instead, they resonate psychically with ravenglass, a crystalline material that creates bonding networks between rider and mount. When the ravenglass corrupts, the wyverns suffer, but that's corruption of the system they depend on, not corruption of their essential nature. It's a brilliant inversion. Rather than treating wyverns as broken dragons, Cronshaw engineers them as creatures with their own biology and their own vulnerabilities. Historical heraldry backs this up. Medieval European coats of arms depicted wyverns as guardians and sentinels, symbols of strength, endurance, and protection. They marked borders, warned travelers, defended holdings. Dragons, by contrast, were hoarders and tyrants. They demanded tribute, contested kingdoms, embodied avarice and wrath. The symbolic roles were distinct, and the visual language was clear. If your family crest showed a wyvern, you were claiming the role of watchful protector. A dragon meant dominion, ambition, and a willingness to burn the world for what you wanted. Those aren't shades of the same archetype. They're fundamentally different mythic functions. So where does the corruption myth come from? Modern fantasy adaptations that prioritize visual spectacle over lore consistency. Game of Thrones is the most visible example. The show gives House Targaryen anatomically accurate wyverns, but calls them dragons, presumably because dragon carries more narrative weight. The three-headed sigil. By strict heraldic rules, those are wyverns. Bipedal, wings as forelimbs. But the text insists they're dragons, and millions of viewers now associate the word dragon with a two-legged silhouette. That conflation has bled into other media, video games, and fan wikis, creating a feedback loop where the anatomical distinction gets dismissed as pedantry instead of recognized as foundational world building. In rigorous lore, Tolkien's analysis of Smaug's build, the heraldic treatises that informed Dungeons and Dragons, the carefully calibrated ecosystems of the Cosmere, the line holds. Wyverns aren't failed dragons. They're a separate evolutionary branch, optimized for speed over endurance, venom over elemental breath, intuition over cunning. They're smaller, faster, and no less deadly within their niche. Treating them as corrupted forms erases the careful ecological and symbolic work that makes fantasy worlds feel layered and real. Next time you see a two-legged beast in the sky, check the limb count before you call it a dragon, and ask yourself what that world gains by keeping the distinction sharp. If you want more lore breakdowns that honor the rules fantasy worlds actually run on, subscribe for deep dives across every corner of the genre.